Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. I've been asked to come here to speak to you today about who I am, what I do, what I've done in the past, and how I got to where I am today. So I'm Dr Beardsley. I'm a project manager at the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory in the Space Science department there. So hopefully I'll encourage you to think about space science as a career, because it's a fantastic career to go into. So a little bit about my background. I'm a Londoner born and bred. I went to school there and got 8 GCSEs, which were heavily science-based for me. I'll come back to why I took those choices a little bit later on in the presentation. I took 3 A-levels at college, physics and double maths, then went on to University College London, where I took a degree in astrophysics, and then stayed there to do a PhD in astronomy as well. After that, I was awarded 2 personal research fellowships to carry on my scientific research, and then I joined RAL Space, where I am today, and I'm now in my 12th year there, so I'm obviously enjoying it quite a lot, otherwise I wouldn't have stayed there for quite so long. Along the way I got married, and I've got 2 lovely young children as well, so it is possible to balance life and work. So where do I work? I work at RAL Space, which is part of the Science and Technology Facilities Council. That's a government-owned organisation which is responsible for running all of the large scientific and technological facilities in the UK. Within STFC we have the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory, and within the RAL we have RAL Space, which is the department I work in. We're a department which has almost 200 permanent staff members, which makes us one of the largest space science groups in Europe, which makes it quite an exciting place to work. We do lots of things within the department. We design and build hardware. We carry out scientific and technological research, and within our own organisation we have the abilities to manufacture some of the more sophisticated components that we require, and are able to test satellites and instruments before they go up into space. Now we do lots of things. We build instruments that go on ground-based telescopes that look up, and we also build instruments that go on spacecraft that go up to look down. We work in the Earth observation area, so we look at sea surface temperature, cloud temperatures and structures. We look at astronomy, so we look at the stars and star-forming regions and how the universe began. We look at the planets, to look at the moon, Mars. We build things to trundle around the surface of other planets. We also look at solar physics as well. We cover a wide spectrum of projects, and at any one time we have something of the order of about 200 projects going on at any one time within our organisation, ranging from very small 1-week-long studies up to multi-million-pound contracts that last for several years. So we have a wide variety of work, a wide variety of careers and disciplines that all work together to put these instruments up into space. Now, it can be quite difficult to put things into space, and I was trying to work out the best way of telling you why it's so difficult, why it's so expensive to put things into space. And while I was doing that, I stumbled across a couple of movies on a NASA Goddard Space Flight Center website, which explains it perfectly. So hopefully these will work, because they did earlier. Here we go.
Now, that being said, it seems obvious that you can't just go building satellites all fitting in. Satellites are expensive things, and you need to make sure that all your plan will work before you run out of money. This is why before building anything, scientists and engineers call the most like an endless series of meetings, phone calls, telecoms, tag-ups, and get-togethers, culminating into no method of time review. Take, for example, the Raven spacecraft. Now, it's a great idea for a satellite, one that studies the Earth atmosphere and Mars.
Stand near the microphone when you talk. Can you stand near the microphone when you talk? I've also got this one as well.
If all goes well, they think that everything makes sense, the budget is in line. There isn't some standards involved, and now we can move on to the next step. And once you've finished, you'll finally be able to get all the data you wanted without any trouble.
So that's the first step in building a spacecraft. You have to talk about it lots, you have to design it lots, and you have to think about it for several years before you actually get to the stage of actually building anything. So that's the Maven spacecraft. I haven't worked on that one. I've worked on several other spacecraft. This one here is the latest one that's actually flown into space. This is called the Solar Dynamics Observatory, and it's a NASA mission built mainly in the US, but my group, the group that I led, built the camera electronics which read out all of the images. Did any of you see the Horizon program on television last night on solar physics? Nobody? Nobody? It was fantastic. There were some stunning images on there, and those stunning images of the sun were read out by the electronics that my team built. Okay, this is a spacecraft. Have you got a laser pointer at all? Have you got a laser pointer? Is that a laser pointer? No, okay. Okay. The box in the center that you can see there is a box of electronics. Doesn't look much, but it costs a lot of money to build these electronics because they're going into space. There are various things that you have to think of, how long they're going to last in space, because when they go into space you can't fix them once they're up there. Okay? Our electronics boxes, we had 6 of these that went on instruments. If you can see the spacecraft on the right hand side there, you get an idea of the scale with the people standing at the bottom there. Right at the very top you can see 4 white boxes. 4 of our electronics boxes are at the back there, behind there. This went into space in February 2010. Its mission was to study the sun, to look at the solar effects, the solar physics, to try to understand how the sun affects the Earth and whether we can actually predict what's going to happen on the sun so we can save the Earth and our communication satellites from failing during large solar storms. So this was one of our biggest projects in recent years, and I'm going to show you another video which will explain why it's so difficult to actually build spacecraft.
So, as you might imagine, it's a little more difficult to put a satellite together. To give you an idea, let's take a look at a box for raising spacecraft. Now, this is a screw on the box. You find a screwdriver, sit down for about 15 seconds, and be done. If you want to put the same thing in the payment order, it's slightly more complicated. You have to test it all, get the bolt through, clean it, make sure it's the right bolt again, build tracking to see it in the sun, get the scaffolding, check the size, check the fit, and finally put it in the carrier bolt. And once you put it all through, you have to test the entire satellite. They're all the same. Now, this all may seem a little silly, but if you've got screws on there something that's millions of miles away, you've got trouble on your hands, and nobody wants that. And what's more, the boat is an easy one. Satellites are complex things with tons of electronics, so you can only imagine how much work the boats take. So, while it may take a little more time and a few more people than office, it's definitely worth the effort. And once it's built, the spacecraft will get up to its building without any problems.
So that's why it's difficult to put spacecraft up into space. When you translate that into reality, it means that it costs a lot of money to buy these bolts to put onto the spacecraft. You might be able to buy a screw from your local B&Q store for a couple of pence. If you're going into space, your screws are going to cost a few pounds each. And when you've got thousands of screws on your spacecraft, the cost soon adds up. With electronic components, it's even worse because they have to be able to withstand radiation in space, as well as the extremes of temperature, hot and cold. Sometimes, when I'm buying electronic components for my electronics box, it takes a year for them to arrive. And so you can imagine that trying to plan for that in advance is going to be quite difficult, and that's why it also takes a long time for these kind of things to be built. So, as you saw at the end there's a lot of people involved in building a spacecraft, okay, a large number of teams, and this is a couple of photographs of the teams that I lead. So I'm a project manager and also a group leader. Project manager means I run projects and make things happen. A group leader means I look after people as well and make sure their careers are on track and look after them from a pastoral sense as well. So at the top there is my group, or at least half of my group. I lead a team of 16 electronic engineers and production staff, and yes, all of them are men. Some of them are older than me, some of them are younger than me. There's a variety of skills and experience there, but I'm the person who's responsible for making sure they achieve what their potential is. At the bottom photograph there is the team that built the electronics box that went up on the Solar Dynamics Observatory spacecraft. And again, yes, they're all but one men, again, with a range of different skills and experience. Within that team photo, there are a number of skills there. There are mechanical engineers, there are product assurance people who make sure that we're doing things right, there are electronics engineers, there are assembly technicians, there are soldering technicians, production managers, software engineers, thermal engineers, systems engineers, and my boss as well in the front there, and my customer who's standing next to me at the front there. So there's a whole range of disciplines, skills that have to be brought together, and it's my responsibility as project manager to bring all of those skills together, to plan everything out for the whole project and make sure it works on time, on budget, and to specification. It's not easy, actually. These projects tend to last a few years, these complicated ones, and it's difficult to try to see far enough in advance to make sure everything is in place at the time. But it suits my personality well because I like to see the overall picture. I don't like concentrating on one tiny little thing all the time. Some people do, and that's why we've got all of these technical experts here, but I like to see the whole picture and how it all comes together. So that suits my temperament well. I'm also very organised, and I like organising other people. Some people call that bossy, but I just call that being organised. And I'm able to organise these people very well. You also have to have excellent communication skills to be able to talk to all of these people. When you imagine that you have a large team of people, you're going to have, if you've got 20 people, you're going to have 20 different personalities, all doing things in their own little way, all having their own quirks of nature, and you have to be able to adapt and communicate with those people and get those individuals communicating with each other. And that's what I find the most challenging thing. It's not the hardware, it's not the technical part of getting things done, it's the human interaction and how you get your team working together. And that's why it's important to have a lot of teamwork in these kind of jobs. You're also going to be negotiating with your team for resources, because these people work on other projects as well. Typically my engineers will be working on 3, 4, maybe 5 different projects at once, and so I have to negotiate for their time to work on my project, because my project is obviously the most important in the world. I also have to negotiate with the customer, because if things don't go quite right, I need to ask them for a bit more money to do the job as they want it done. And then I have to have financial control. So the projects I look after, currently I run £3 million plus contracts at the moment, and I'm responsible for making sure that we deliver what we're supposed to within that budget. And if we go over budget, then I'm in trouble. So there's a lot of different skills that you need as a project manager, and as a project manager I'm drawing on all of the technical and scientific expertise that I've built up over the last 15 years in employment. So I really enjoy being a project manager. It's a great job. It builds on lots of skills that I've had, and it builds on my strengths of communication and teamwork and management and organisation. So I'm really enjoying it at the moment. And this is why it is so important to actually put things in space, and the reason why I enjoy going to work every day is because we bring back pictures like this. This is one of the images that you will have seen on the television last night. This is the sun, and you can see a huge coronal mass ejection coming out there. You can see the bright spot. The Earth would be swallowed up by that spot. That's the kind of scale that you have there. And this, you can see what a huge plume of material that's being ejected from the sun. And this is coming out into space. And these are the kind of storms that can cause effects on the Earth as well, by knocking out electricity supplies, knocking out communication satellites that are in Earth. And this is why it's so important to study things like the sun. And of course the sun is the thing that gives us life. It gives us heat and it gives us energy, and it's the reason why we're here today. So if we understand more about the sun and its impacts on the Earth, we can look after ourselves and our planets a little bit better. So this image was taken with Solar Dynamics Observatory. So these images were read out using the electronics that my team built, and that makes me incredibly proud and really excited that I've been able to be part of that kind of activity. So work I've done, I haven't always been a project manager. As I say, I've built on my skills in the past, and I've had both scientific and technical jobs in the past. Working backwards from most recent to the past, when I joined RAL, I was an instrument scientist on Europe's very first mission to the moon. Now I know America and Russia have been to the moon many times, but Europe hadn't actually sent a spacecraft to the moon until 2003, when Smart 1 went to the moon. On board that was an instrument called DKIX, which is an X-ray spectrometer, and in the centre at the bottom there you can see the instrument. That's not me in the photograph, I actually took the photograph. I don't like being in photographs. So I developed an X-ray spectrometer. As a scientist coming in, I was responsible for taking the scientific requirements from the science experts, talking to the technical people and translating them into a document which the instrument could be built from. So I was responsible for translating, if you like, between the science and the technical, because quite often the scientists will want to do wonderful things that simply aren't technically possible at the current time. So there has to be some compromise between what the scientists really want and what's technically available at the time. So that was a really interesting job, and it was my very first space mission where I was involved in watching the launch go up. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the launch site. I was actually being filmed by the sky at night with Patrick Moore at our organisation, watching the launch from afar. So the X-ray spectrometer on the moon will look at the elemental composition to find out what the moon is made of in terms of elemental composition, so magnesium, silicon, iron, and so on. There are other instruments that you can use which look at the mineralogy of the moon, and that's what I used to do as a scientist. After I completed my PhD, I got some research fellowship, and I carried out studies of the moon, looking at the mineralogy of the moon, which basically what rock types the moon's made of. On the bottom right-hand side here, you can see some charts here. These are spectral signatures of different types of rock that you would typically find on the moon. And the blue bars are the spectral bands that a mission called Clementine looked at the moon in. And I looked at Clementine data for a number of years to start mapping the moon and looking in particular at the Mare regions. On the far side over there, that multicoloured picture there is a map of an area of the moon called Oceanus Procellarum. On the moon you can see dark areas. Those are ancient lava flows which have solidified over billions of years. And the coloured picture there shows the different numbers of flows that you can see. In visual, it just looks dark, but when you look at it in a spectral wavelength, you can see all the different types of lava flows that have erupted over time. And we found many, many dozens of different lava flows that will have erupted with different material over different times on the surface of the moon. And again, the moon is really important. The moon is my favourite celestial body because it's closest to us. You can see lots of things without any binoculars or telescopes. You can see lots of different features on the moon. It's our closest neighbour. We've walked on the moon, and therefore it feels very special to me. It can also tell us a lot. I mean, why is the moon there? The moon is the largest satellite in the solar system when you compare it to the relative size of its host body, the Earth. Why is it so large? Was it the result of something smashing into the Earth when it was forming, throwing off all of this material which eventually formed the moon? Why is the thickness of the moon's crust so thick on the far side and not so thick on the near side? Why is there so much volcanic activity on the near side and not on the far side? By understanding the moon a bit more, we can understand more about our own evolution and our own origin. So the moon is a very special body to me, and I studied that for a number of years. Prior to that, as a research student, I studied dust around other stars, looking at the dust that might form planets around other stars. So I was using telescopes in Hawaii and Australia. I was traveling there to use the telescopes to take data from different stars, to look at the dust that was forming around those stars to find out whether they were going to form planets one day. So I've done a variety of different things, looking at the stars, the moon, technical stuff, and I've had a wonderfully varied career so far. So just as a summary, I've deliberately chosen to vary my career because I like change, I like variation, and it is possible to do that. So whatever choices you make now, it's not the end, okay? You've got a very long career ahead of you, and it is possible to change at various stages, and I've done that within space science. Started off with astrophysics, then went into planetary science. I did take a bit of a leap of faith going into strategic management. I worked in my head office for a little while, working on the strategy, developing the strategy for our whole organisation. I did that for about 9 months. It was fascinating. It gave me a completely different outlook on life, but it made me realise that my heart lies in space science. So I went back to space science, and that's when I got the job that I have now, which is as a project manager, organising different projects to put instruments up onto spacecraft and go into space. And then recently I took on the more pastoral role of group leader, looking after individuals from a personal level. So what was my inspiration? As a child, I've always loved space. I've always looked at the stars from my back garden. I would stand outside and look at the few stars I could see from central London and think, wow, I want to go up into space. I used to love science fiction television programs, especially Star Trek, and thought, right, I want to go on the Starship Enterprise. I want to be like Captain Kirk and go amongst the stars and go into space. And it was really that kind of inspiration that just made me want to work in space science. So I wrote to NASA, I wrote to the European Space Agency, I wrote to all the different space agencies across the world when I was about 7 or 8, and said, I want to be an astronaut. What do I have to do to be an astronaut? And they wrote back and they told me what I needed to do to be an astronaut. And it's that defined my career path. That's why I took all the physics, the chemistry, biology as individual GCSE. That's why I took the A-levels that I did, and that's why I took the degree I did, because I wanted to go into space and because I wanted to be a space scientist and I wanted to work in the space science field. So that's what defined my career path. So it was actually quite easy for me because I knew what I wanted to do from a very early age, and I still want to do that. So I feel very privileged that I was able to choose the career that I wanted to do right from a very young age. And it's worked for me. It's worked very well. The school I went to wasn't, I have to say, brilliant. It was one of the worst schools in the country at the time I was there, but nevertheless, I was able to work through that. I did really well. I got my GCSEs, I went to university, I got a first-class degree, and I'm doing really well now. So I'm very happy with my career. Has it always been plain sailing? Well, for me, I think I've had a really easy run of it. But there are also always some people who think otherwise. And here are some real quotes that I had along the way from my career. Graphical communication teacher when I was in year 10. He asked me what I wanted to do for a career. And I said, well, I don't know. I want to be maybe a nuclear physicist or an astrophysicist. And he looked at me and he went, no, you can't do that. You've got to be clever to do that. So the result of that was, well, I got a first-class degree in astrophysics. I guess that makes me clever enough to do space science, so I'm glad I didn't listen to him. Second, my A-level physics teacher told me, don't go into physics, there's no future in it. Great, thanks very much. So result, I'm still here. Almost 20 years after she told me that, I'm still in a physics-based career. And it's complete rubbish, by the way, because if you take science and maths, then you're opening up your options, you're not closing them. Because there are many friends of mine who I went to university with who are not in science and engineering areas now, but there's at least 3 people I know who are producing television programs, one of whom is a producer for the BBC. Somebody else, 2 people are accountants, and various other careers that I know, and I can talk to you offline about that if you want to. So you're not closing off your options by choosing maths and physics and other science options. You're actually opening them up because of the training that you get by taking those options. So the final one was actually from my dad. What do you want to go to university for? You're only going to have to give it up when you get married and have kids. Well, I'm married and I have kids and I'm still here, so I'm really glad I didn't listen to him as well. But bless him, that was the era that he was brought up in. He was brought up in a time when women stayed at home and men went out to work, and that's all he knew. I'm the very first person from my family to go to university, so he had no experience of what it was like to go to university or the benefits that you could get from going to university and choosing a science and engineering career. So he didn't know any better. So it was fortunate that I didn't listen to any of those people. I knew what I wanted to do, and so I just went out and did it. So you can do it too if you want to. The most important advice that I can give you is to listen to yourself, because you know what's best for you. You know what interests you, you know what you're good at, you know what you want to do with your life. Okay? Deep down, you know. I would say listen to other people's advice because it's very important. Other people do know some stuff, but as the previous quote showed, you don't have to listen to it if it's not necessarily the right advice. Okay? And remember, as I said, don't worry about science and maths limiting your options, because it doesn't. It just opens them up. It opens the floodgates, because by taking science and maths, you're getting a logical training, problem-solving training, which is required by many, many different fields outside of the typical science and engineering area. And you never know, you might like science and engineering. I certainly do, and I certainly had a fantastic career and met lots of wonderful people doing it. And would I do it again? Most definitely, yes. I would make all the same choices and do all the same things again, and I'm very, very happy in the role that I've got at the moment. And I hope very much that you are as happy as I am 20 years down the line. Thank you.